I have found that this is the best and most complete way that I can offer assistance to my realtor is making sure that the expert in that particular thing is available to them and I connect them.
Hello and welcome to / Real Estate. I'm your host, Chris, and this is the podcast where we talk about technology and real estate. Although we're going to do something a little bit different today, and we're going to talk about title. So we've got Tamera Gaede, who's one of our Fidelity friends here, and I'm just going to give like a little disclosure up front that Real Geeks is a Fidelity company, and we're part of that whole thing. So got that covered, check. But Tamera, you want to give us a brief introduction of who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name is Tamera Gaede. Hi, everybody. I'm the director of Colin County Sales for Lawyers Title, which is one of the Fidelity family of companies. I've been in real estate about 16 years now. I've always been on the affiliate side. I have always been of service to realtors, but I moved over to Title July. It'll be 7 years. And have found really good success with my amazing escrow team. I am a licensed realtor. I have never practiced. I say I'm the most educated realtor that's never done a transaction in her life. I have 3 designations, if you can believe that. And also, I run a podcast. And so my podcast is called The Closing Table with Lawyers Title. I've been running that for about 3 years now. We focus on education and bringing value to our realtor friends. I guess lastly, I also have a team. So I have a rep underneath me. Her name is Phoebe Toon. She's amazing. She's the next up and comer in title sales. And then, of course, my assistant, Casey. So, and Casey makes sure that I keep running down the road at a really fast pace and while still providing value to my clients.
That's
right?
awesome. So I'm happy that we're having this because, you know, there are many mysteries in real estate. But what is title and what do, title execs do and all that kind of stuff? It's got to be like one of those like top level, like, okay, once we figure that out, we'll be experts.
Well, that's the tip, sure,
Yep.
of what you need to know in order to work in title. So title insurance is basically insurance, right? We're protecting against issues on the title that come up after closing. And that's the briefest explanation that I give realtors. We don't get too far in the weeds with it. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't really understand what the title insurance policy is supposed to do for them. So it's an insurance policy on the property against, like I said, issues coming up on title. For example, maybe a lien pops up from the previous owner. The title insurance policy will kick in to clear that lien for the new owner. Okay, so that's a really good example of what title insurance is. Now, that's not what I do.
Right. Yes.
I have an amazing escrow team that I could not do what I do without them. But what my job is to help realtors either sustain or grow their business, right? So I'm very much a challenge solution kind of person. I sit down with our realtor partners and not just realtors, lenders, wholesaler, and investors. I have a diverse client portfolio. But it's really about how can we help you overcome whatever challenge you're facing in your business right now. And if I can help you and eliminate that challenge or fill that hole, will you partner with me when it's time to bring a contract to the table? And so I'm very much a challenge solution kind of person.
Yeah, yeah. So title reps, title execs seem like kind of oracles in the real estate space that are there to help real estate agents when they are stuck growing their business, essentially. Is that a good summary?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could call us a therapist, a hole plugger,
Yeah.
and look, in speaking along that vein, the first and foremost thing is for us to provide excellent service during the contract to close process. If we can't do that, then I don't think the rest of it matters, right? So, we can whip out all the shiny objects and tools or whatever they need. But if my escrow team doesn't take it across the line and score the goal, right, we're never going to see another contract again. So having that excellent relationship with your escrow officers and your escrow assistants is truly important an incredibly important component to our job to make sure
Mhm.
that we can keep doing what we're doing, right? And it's important to look at your escrow team as also a client. I make sure they're well fed. I make sure if they need happy hour that we've got happy hour. So, and checking in with them so that I'm more plugged in with the intricacies of a deal. Now, I don't want to get too much in the weeds with them. I stay in my lane. But if there's a problem with a contract and we need to bring in our realtor partner, a lot of times I am that person that will step in and help smooth the path, right? So that we can continue to closing. But more specifically, my job is to sit down and help, like I said, with any kind of challenges the realtors are facing in their business. But excellent service is incredibly important.
Yeah. So actually, let's just drill into this real fast because, I like to approach this from like a couple different angles, like and so I think the question I'm going to ask you is more maybe from the consumer standpoint, like the end consumer, the person that's actually like buying and selling the house, because title is sort of invisible to them. Like the agent seems to make that decision, even though the consumer technically makes the decision. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's really interesting because most of the time the listing agent chooses where the title where the closing process is going to be done. But it's the buyer's insurance policy. So really the buyer's agent should be the one to navigate where the closing is, but that's not how it's typically done. And no, the consumer, is that the place where I go to sign the paperwork and we get a little celebration? I'm like, yep, that's what we do. Yep, that's what we do.
Yep. Yeah. So if I'm a real estate agent that's working with the client and the client asks me, like, well, what should I look for in a good title organization? Like, do you have a quick answer for that?
It's so rare that that's part of the conversation that, I mean, yes, I do have an answer, of course. You want someone that you want stability in the company, right? Right now, because real estate is really challenging, we're seeing some of our smaller competitors go out of the market. So, what happens when you have a problem later on? Are they going to be there to still insure that property? So, if the buyer's looking at the title company, they want someone like us. I mean, we're part of Fidelity National Financial, the largest holder of title companies in the nation, right? We have the largest underwriter in the nation. So we're not going anywhere. You can rest assured when you do close with us, if there is something later on that we need to talk about, we're going to be here. I have horror stories where title companies have closed and there has been an issue. And they call us and ask us, what do we do? And we're like, well, there's nothing to be done at this point because they're no longer here. So working with a very stable, and you need to say the word successful title conglomerate like us is very important so that your protection is there tomorrow. But the short version, and you need to have a really competent escrow team that's going to get you to the closing table. That is always the goal, to get to the closing table. I know we get caught up in a lot of intricacies in the contract to close process that could potentially derail the closing, right? So, having to extend the closing date or not being able to get all the documents that we need or, a lender consideration. There's a lot of reasons why we could have some little, you know, issues when we're going from the contract to close process. And I've heard, I always hear the stories, right? About, well, this escrow officer didn't know that we needed this document and a delayed closing. And we unfortunately get really antsy about, you know, having these problems. Well, we need to put those aside, right? Always, how do we come back together? Because we all want to sell and buy this house.
That's
That
right.
is what we are
Yeah.
trying to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So, how do we kind of let go of the noise, let go of, and move together forward in a positive way so we can accomplish the goal? Does that make sense?
That absolutely makes sense. Okay, so I actually think that's a really good answer for what title does, right? So now maybe now if we shift the focus a little bit more towards like what you do and like your function in the industry.
What is it that I do?
Yeah.
That changes every day.
Based off what's going on in the market.
That's
Right.
right. And what phone
Yeah.
calls I get.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So walk us through some examples of like, and actually maybe I'll ask you here in a second, like, at different times in the market based off different, like, what's happening. But maybe we focus on today. Like what kind of issues are you solving for your customers?
Well, let's back up just a second because I think it's important to say that we all have a different value proposition. Okay. What my secret sauce is isn't going to be the same for someone else because my experience has shaped my value proposition. Okay. So I'll give you an example. For when you're looking at Fidelity National Financial, they have invested, I don't even know what the number is. It was at least 6 billion in agent technology. So we have any tool that we need, like Real Geeks, which I talk about Real Geeks because I think it's a fantastic CRM. But I think, we have all of these tools ready and available. Okay. But that doesn't mean that that's the right fit for everyone. But what my point more so is that it is my job, what my value promise is that my network at this point in my career is vast. So whatever your challenge is, I'm not the one that's going to necessarily solve it. I don't claim to be a real estate coach. I know a lot about real estate and being a realtor, but I don't claim to be a real estate coach. What I do claim is that whatever your challenge is, I'm guessing I have someone in my network that can help you. And so I will bring those people together to help solve whatever the challenge is. That's what I do. Okay. Because look, here's the thing. I don't want to conflict with what your broker's telling you. If you're a team member, I don't want to conflict with what your team leader is telling you. And I may not necessarily know the intricacies of everything that your broker or team leader or whoever it is bringing to your table, right? So I do rely on the realtor to bring me complete information so we can make an assessment and get them the right tool that they need without stepping on the toes of their mentors or people that they're already working with. But I have found that if I try to be a real estate coach, meaning I'm the one that's sitting there going, okay, let's do a business plan and let's figure out how many calls you need to make and how many appointments you need to make and what are your lines of business and all of those things that real estate coaches do to help them get to their goal GCI at the end of the year. It's also not scalable for me, right? And so there is a balance in I want to serve, but I also have to make sure that I can serve everyone. So it's not that I don't want to help. It's just that I have found that this is the best and most complete way that I can offer assistance to my realtor is making sure that the expert in that particular thing is available to them and I connect them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. So let me repeat what I'm hearing. In an industry that is so based off building a network, it's almost like you're a network multiplier. Like you've already been around for a really long time. Your job is to talk to all these people that are solving different problems. And so when someone, comes to you and you're playing that therapist role, you can say, actually, you really need to go talk to person X because they've dealt with a similar situation.
And it's very important that I facilitate that connection and be a part of the ongoing calls or meetings with that connection. I don't just hand off and drop and go away.
Right.
And then I'm following up with my client on a regular basis saying, is this working for you? Is this the right fit? Do we need to pivot? Is there something better I need to look at? But it's not my job to help them implement. It's my job to connect and oversee.
One of the things we talk about a lot here, and we're talking about more and more, is telling a story about like your brand, your personal brand, and I think a lot of real estate agents struggle with that. Like trying to set themselves apart. Have you thought about like how you personally are different from other people in the title space?
Absolutely. I think I have to think about it all the time, right? Because my goal every day is to get up and get in a room full of people that I want to do business with. And how do I separate myself from that? Some of the things that I have done to separate myself, number one is running the podcast. And by the way, Chris, that is a labor of love. Okay. That is not easy to do all of the
Yes.
time. And, my guests are people that I either already do business with or people that I want to have in my business roster. And it is
Maybe at the
really
end, we're going to come back
intentional.
and we're going to talk about top tips for running a podcast. I think that would be
Top tips for running a podcast. Okay. Well, I
yeah,
don't know if you want to do it how I do it because it's a lot of work, but, it is, that is a separator, right? Is
yeah.
I can't be in all the places anymore. I've done all of the work at the boards. I've done all of the, industry events and that sort of thing. But in today's world, that's not the fastest way to get in front of the largest group of people. The fastest way to get in front of people and really brand and market yourself is through social media. So this is the tool that I use for that. The other tool that I use, and now look, there's a lot of research that goes into what I do. I get all the top industry magazines in my inbox every day. I'm constantly researching common topics, common issues coming up, what is important to realtors. I've got my ear to the ground. I'm always wanting to know what is going to affect their business. And that comes through a lot of research. But I also run 3 masterminds now. We just added another one with my team, with Phoebe, who's on my team. And the big one that I've been running it for about 4 years. And so that also helps catapult topics for the podcast, right? Because we're coming together, we're talking about issues that are important to realtors. And I am very much I take that information and use it in my job in other places, right? I have clients that call me and say, okay, what are you hearing right now? What's important? What am I missing? And so being positioned as that kind of facilitator of important information has also been something that has set me apart. But it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, no, and I think this is a good window into the back end because I've heard this before of like title reps describing themselves as like a hub for industry and information, stuff like that. But it's interesting to hear you describe what you're doing when you're not in front of the agents that are prepping you for those conversations.
And that's when my calendar becomes incredibly important. I'm very respectful of my calendar, and I don't deviate for just about anything.
Are you a time blocking person?
Because otherwise I can't get it done, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But yes, being a facilitator of information, but also understanding how to sift through information and extract the things that are important. And I don't want to take credit for doing all of this by myself. Okay. I can't do it if I hear an idea or I hear something that is starting to rattle in real estate. And then I'll make calls to my expert realtors, right? And say, do you see this as something that's affecting you? Do you see this as a common thread of either something that's great about coming in real estate or something that's not great? And so it's a big circle of love. Okay. I don't do all of this by myself. I can't do it without my real estate partners. Okay. That's very important.
Do you look at your CRM and struggle to identify who to prioritize? Real Geeks has you covered with our new Lead Feed. The Lead Feed provides a centralized mission control, a clear, actionable view of prioritized leads. By surfacing leads in 4 intuitive categories, the Lead Feed empowers agents to take immediate action and manage their pipelines effectively. Streamline your workflow with Real Geeks.
I guess talk to me right now about like some of the trends that you're thinking about at the moment, and I that's like kind of a topical thing, but I also want to connect it back to where you're collecting that information and distributing it to. So we kind of give people a little tidbit of like, hey, this is what we're thinking about right now, but then this is also like the resources that we're drawing on to form that thought.
Sure. And I do again want to express how important some of this networking is because I can't absorb it all. Technology, for example, it's moving way too fast. And so, I mean, just take AI, for example, trying to stay on the top of all the things, that's when you have to rely on your database and your network to help move you along so you don't have to be the expert in all the things, right? So I will give you an example. I mean, the mastermind, DFW Game Changers Mastermind was born March 2021. Very different market, okay? But it started because all of my clients were calling me and they all had the common thread at the time. I've got 300 people at my open house. How do I organize it so I can follow up with everyone? I have 100 offers on a house. What are other agents using to organize those offers and prioritize those offers? That's just 2 examples. And I said, wait a minute, guys. You get and most importantly back then, the contract, every line item of the contract was being wielded as a negotiator in these deals, and one wrong line and you lost the offer, right? So it was really important to get everyone in a room so we could talk about these strategies and help a whole bunch of people at once, right? And I say a whole bunch, the group's about 20 people. But that's how it started. Today, where it is, the things that we're talking about are still ramifications from the NAR settlement. We have a whole lot of conversation about clear cooperation right now. And this new, it's called, I'm going to get the name wrong, delayed marketing something. It's basically an add-on to clear cooperation to help with private listings. Compass, Robert Refkin was kind of at the forefront of, we don't like clear cooperation. We want our private listings. We understand why, right? Because if Compass has both sides of the deal, they get the market share.
Yep.
So that became a big thing. Locally, we have a merger in conversation right now with our two biggest boards, Collin County Association of Realtors and Metro Texas Association of Realtors. They're in the talks right now about merging so that they can become, HAR, Houston Association of Realtors, is the #1 board in Texas, but we want more power, right? And what are the pros and cons of doing that? Now, like I said, yeah, and we've uncovered some pros and cons in that in our conversations, but those are some really good examples of what it looks like today. So it is very much on the phone, plugged in with my clients, talking to them. Okay, I see this. Is this important to you? Or what do you see as a pro and con from this? And then putting all that information together and distributing it in a responsible way. I'm very clear about when I'm outside of my depth. Okay, so
Right.
I
Right.
don't want to overstep and say something that is wrong and pass misinformation. So I'm very careful about making sure I've got my facts straight. I understand what the conversation is and only relaying information when that's not outside of what I should be talking about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think this is it's a behavior that I think a lot of very successful people have, or maybe a habit that a lot of successful people have, where it's like recognizing when you don't have all the information. And so you're going to call someone that, is going to accelerate your learning curve. So, if you're the agent that doesn't really understand like why these two boards are merging together and like what that's going to mean to you or what's going on with clear cooperation, it's like, yeah, you could go do all the primary research yourself, or you could take a shortcut and have a buddy help you.
And I don't have any original thought. Let's be clear about that. I hijack everything. Okay. So, if someone's doing it faster and smarter than me, then I want to adopt their practices so I can do it faster and smarter.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And maybe I'll make a comment on that as well, because I feel like, I'm from the marketing world, and a lot of times we'll get that like, oh, well, did you invent that? It's like, well, no, I'm actually constantly talking to people that are both inside the real estate industry and the technology industries and outside of our industries. Because I want to collect the best thoughts and stick them in the blender and, get something out that's going to work for me, in my company. So talk to me about the top tips that you're seeing agents use to build their business.
Well, okay. So I think look, real estate is hard right now. It's hard. Okay. And I know everybody wants to be like, it's okay. And this is a normal market. La, la, la. It's hard. Okay. It's hard right now. It's been hard this is our 3rd year of hard. Okay. And whenever it gets hard, we all have a tendency to kind of start looking around at what could we do differently to build some transactions into our pipeline, right? I get a ton of calls about geofarming, which geofarming is a great tool to build a real estate business. It could be, I typically tell realtors you need to have four businesses in your pipeline, okay? Or 4 lines of business, okay? So your database, you can do geofarming, you could have some investors, you could have something, okay? So 4 lines of business to keep your pipeline full. And one of the things that is very common right now is for realtors to look at geofarming. But geofarming it's not an instant payoff. That's a 9 to probably 12-month road of really plugging into a neighborhood and becoming part of the neighborhood in order for you to be able to do it successfully. Can it be done successfully? Yes. But is that the payoff that you need for your pipeline right now? Because I know the stat last year, 71% of agents never did a transaction. That's a nationwide stat from NAR. This year, we're looking at in the 90 percentile of agents that have not done a transaction. So your biggest gift right now to get a transaction going in your pipeline is your database. Let's focus on your database, okay? And making sure that what you're doing with your activities is farming out of people, your circle of friends or the people that know them, right? The people that know, like you, and trust you already. So when a realtor calls me about geofarming, I want to back up a step, okay, and say, are you doing everything you can do to farm your database? Because that is going to be your immediate payoff. And I will say, inevitably, when they say no, and I say, okay, let's focus in on how you've structured your database. The first question I ask is, do you have a CRM? And do you know how many no's I get? Do you know how
Oh,
many no's I
oh,
get?
working for a CRM company, I know exactly how many no's you get. And yeah, the number of times I've been at, networking events or trade shows and I've asked an agent like, "Hey, so what are you using for CRM?" And they're like, "My iPhone." And I'm like, "That's not
Yeah,
like
that's not a
that's like your
that's not a
iPhone,
CRM.
like you're using a CRM on your iPhone." No, 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 I'm using Apple Contacts. I'm like, "Oh, buddy."
Yeah, no.
Uh, yeah.
No, and look, a lot of people have to start as something incredibly budget friendly. I understand that, right? When you're first starting in the business, it's very expensive to be a realtor. So if you can leverage some tools that are free to you, like a spreadsheet, like your contact, okay, I get it. But at some point, you have to graduate and you have to understand that all the fee money that you've already paid was just to get you to be a realtor. Now you have to invest something in your business, and it needs to start with a CRM. I am I believe I'm the number one CRM user at Fidelity on the web-based platform. I'm not the number one app user. I talked to her and she's amazing. But I know I'm number one, at least in my division. And so I am very diligent about leveraging my CRM because you can't scale without a CRM and you can't keep up with everybody in your database without a CRM. So being incredibly disciplined. And look, I know it's boring. It's terrible. It's terrible work. We all want to be out having fun, connecting with people, going to meetings and all of this kind of stuff, but you got to do the background work to get you there. And so Fidelity has several few CRM products available to us, and that's when I bring in Real Geeks a lot because you guys are very good at the individual producer or small team producer, so you're a really good fit for that mid-level producer that just really needs to get things going in an upward trajectory. The price point is good, the CRM is robust, and it's less work for them to do because you built it out in a way that makes it easy for agents to use. So they plug in, you've got a lot of automatic things that already happen for them, and they can have their database working for them while they're going to the meetings, while they're working with their face-to-face contacts. And that's really important. And when we talk about database, we're not just talking about the people that you interact with physically, right? We're talking about the people that you interact with on social media and people that need to find you online and having your website set up and having your CRM set up. All of this is the complete, SOI database that you're looking for to help push leads into your pipeline.
Tell me, what are some common misconceptions that people have about title reps?
Title reps or title or escrow or all of the above.
I'll let you take that wherever you want, because usually when I ask a question like this, it's a little bit open ended. It's like, whatever's, you see is like the biggest glaring issue. So, I'll leave that with you. You can answer that how you want.
Well, I think the biggest misconception for title reps, I think the thing that we have to keep in mind as realtors is that your title rep is there to help support you. We can't pay for your business. We have regulations like, RESPA and, those P53 that we have to follow or else we can get in trouble and you can get in trouble. And I'm talking about a $10,000 fine each, okay, if we get caught. So it's very hard to have those conversations sometimes because there are competitors in the market that do overextend and do things that they're not supposed to try to have an edge up in competition. I mean, we're an incredibly competitive business, right? We have a lot of really good competitors out there, and so everyone's trying to get their edge, right? And so I think it's very important to help the realtor understand that yes, we are a support line for you, but there is a limit to what we can do so that we all stay out of trouble. Uh, I think as far as the escrow side is concerned, we have to keep in mind that the escrow officer is not a licensed attorney. Okay. The escrow officer is there, but there is a limit to what they can do or talk about it as well. And I think sometimes we lean on our escrow officers to give us some expert advice that really should be deferred to an attorney. We're really good about saying, nope, that's outside of what we can talk to you about. Now we need to refer you to an attorney. But I think, having that understanding that there's a limit what we can all do or talk about is really important, because I know that there's people that get frustrated with the limitations, but realtors have limitations too, right? They have limitations in what they can do. So I think understanding that we're all doing our best to move down the road together without doing things that will get us all in trouble. That's kind of what we're trying to do at the end of the day.
Maybe to summarize, it's like be as competitive as you can within the bounds of, what's legal and ethical and the right thing to do in the industry.
And I think lastly, it's important to keep in mind that we are a disinterested third party to the contract. Okay. So once you guys, if the buyer's agent and the listing agent get into a dispute, we're not the ones that get to settle that dispute. Okay. We don't have a dog in the hunt. Okay. We are there to facilitate the contract to closing process. So, earnest money disputes is a prime example. They expect us to make a decision or release the earnest money, and we need you to release the earnest money to us. But it's important to understand that once we get into that dispute, we're out. We're disinterested third party. We're done. You guys have to work that out, and whatever that looks like, right, is between you guys to figure out. So I think understanding, again, that just kind of circles back to, we all have limitations, and we all have things that we're trying, to accomplish and get to the closing table, but we have to all respect that there's boundaries in this.
Makes a lot of sense. Cool. Okay, I got one more thing for you before we close out. It's sort of bonus round. So
bonus round? I didn't know about bonus round. Okay.
I mean, because there's a lot of buzz in the industry about like, okay, how do I promote myself? How do I tell my story? That kind of thing. And you run a podcast. We're clearly recording a podcast right now. And so I am curious about why you decided to start it, like how you run it. And then maybe any tips that you would have for someone that's started, like just trying to decide, is that the right choice for them? So maybe we just start with like, okay, so you have a podcast. Like, why did you decide to go down that route?
So, actually, it wasn't my idea. We had a social media partner. He was an instructor for us that floated the idea to our corporate office and said that it would be what do you think about your sales team all being, having part in a podcast? And we loved the idea. Well, most of us did. There was a few that had some giant fear of getting on camera, that they were going to melt. I mean, literally, there was one, I could think of one rabbit's hilarious. And she will know exactly that I'm talking about her, but I will not say her name. Literally, anytime she has to get up in front of any audience, you can see her melting into the floor, okay, with fear. Yeah. And so we had some that were more excited about it than others. But in my previous parts in real estate, I was catapulted into the front of rooms, meaning 2 people, 10 people, 200 people, 2,000 people. So I don't have a fear of speaking in front of people anymore. And the camera to me is just another, speaking engagement. So that kind of stuff never bothered me. What bothered me is making sure that the content was valuable. And so I putting in the work to make sure that what we produce means something to the people that are watching the podcast. So it was open to the entire sales team at first, but just like with anything else, everybody quickly drops off. And if I want to do it, I just take it over. And that's kind of what has happened. I mean, now yep. I'm the host of the podcast, consistent host. So that's how it started.
So what are some, maybe just thinking about like top 3 tips that you'd give someone that's thinking about starting a podcast? Like, what are the challenges you've run into? What were the things you had to figure out?
The first one is don't be scared.
There you go. It's easy.
Your people already know what you look like. They already know what you sound like. They already love you. And that's just with any video.
And you're doing audio and video, right? It's both.
Yeah, it's any video.
Yeah.
Don't be scared. Don't be scared. That's the number one tip. You got to get over that fear, right? And after you do it a few times, that fear starts to go away. You've got to be in a safe space when you do it with people that aren't going to make you look bad, that they're going to make you, that you can trust to make you look your best. But really, you have to just get over the fear that, you're going to sound weird or you're going to look weird. I'm one take Tamera. Okay. We don't go back and do it again. Okay. So we're going to move down the road. What it looks like is what it looks like. But I also pre-record so we can edit out things. But that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is making sure, and I struggle with, there's about a midway part in the year with the podcast that I'm like, okay, I don't know what to talk about. especially if the real estate market isn't doing something incredible, that we have just coming at us. I mean, we've had so much coming at us since 2020. But even with that, I still struggle with content or what should we talk about. I give myself grace. I shoot for 4 recordings a month, but if we only do 2, that's okay. And if I need to take a break, I take a break, and then creativity will come to me in, a month or whatever it is. So I'm not trying to hit some giant goal with episodes. I think consistency is the biggest thing. As a matter of fact, I had to jump off my podcast and take a break since Thanksgiving. I'm about to start it up again because I had a family tragedy that took my attention away. And I have had people say, "We haven't seen your podcast. Where's your podcast?" And so it is, once you are consistent, people will recognize it and they'll look for it. Okay. And so I think giving yourself some grace with, if you're not feeling as creative about who should I have on or what should we talk about, allowing yourself to take that break. But I think the biggest thing is understanding that it is work. I mean, it is a lot of work. It's not easy to put a podcast on. And the way mine is structured, it's similar to this, right? I have a guest. I sit down the same way you guys do. I produce the topic discussions in advance with the person that I'm going to have on the show so that we make sure we're highlighting their best features in their business. And then we have the podcast recording, right? So it takes a lot of work on the front end to get it to recording. And then on the back end, then it's got to be edited and produced and sliced up into reels. And all of that stuff has to have titles and names and commentary on the post and where you're going to store it and how are you going to track views. So you might need a little, if you're trying to do it at the level that I am, you're going to need support. You can't manage all of that yourself. But typically your podcast producer can help you with a lot of those things. And I have an amazing podcast producer that is also a realtor. So he really understands what I'm trying to accomplish. But I think those are the things, and just get over your fear, be consistent and take a break if you're lacking creativity. And then lastly, understand that this is a labor of love, but it's worth it.
That really resonates for me. I think thinking about / real estate and what we do here, it's obviously great working with producer Sean. He gives me very honest feedback on how I'm doing or how we're doing as a podcast. I think one of the other things that we do is, kind of back to this theme of how you're marketing yourself. We look out at the industry of, other podcasts and what they're doing well. And, whether it's the numbers that they're producing or whether it's just the vibe that they're producing, and we'll say, okay, we want to emulate that. And so, one of the decisions that we made is like you did. We decided to go from live streaming to pre-recording and editing so that we could produce at a much higher quality level.
Well, and I'll tell you, if you try to do live with a bunch of realtors, you're never going to have a guest. There is absolutely not.
Yeah. Live scares some people, and then
Live
other
scares
people
Yeah.
people like it. There is that one person out there that's like, no, I'd actually rather do it live. I think it's like the pressure makes them feel like they're gonna put their best effort out there, and if it's pre-recorded, they're like, oh, all right, I'll give you
Those
80%.
are probably the people that also eat nails for breakfast. So they're just
exactly.
really those monsters in the business
Right.
that most realtors feel much more comfortable with a pre-recording. And I will give you one other tip. If you want to get your podcast lifted off the ground, but work smarter, not harder, cross-pollinate. Be on other people's podcasts that already have one and ask them to join yours, because that way you're getting their viewership to view yours as well. It's a way to grow it faster.
Absolutely. This has been awesome. Tamera, tell people where they can find you.
Well, you got to spell my name because that one's a toughie. But once you do, you can find me on all the social media platforms. So Facebook, Instagram, YouTube are the primary ways. And then also, you can always contact me directly. I'm on the Lawyer's Title website.
Yes, that's excellent. All right, this has been awesome, everyone. Leave your comments down below, comments, questions. We read all of those. We try and answer as many of them as you can. If you have people that we should interview, then definitely leave comments or email us, and we'll talk to you later. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.